Equity.Guru Investor Roundtable. You've been waiting for it. Here it is. Rob Simpson upstairs with Chris Perry over there, living the high life, looking down upon TK Indochina and Vishal Vatura. It's Skyharbour Resources today, SYH.V on the Toronto Exchange. And Vishal, I guess if I want a little thorium and a little gold with my uranium, that's the place I want to go.
Yep, I guess so. I mean, Skyharbour is, I would say, a preeminent uranium explorer. They focus on that, but as Rob just said, seems like they have a gold and base metal project as well. I guess maybe when the uranium market was depressed, management decided to look at those markets, which looked a bit more exciting. But the Athabasca Basin here, I'll show you where that is in Saskatchewan. But basically, this is where you want to be if you're a uranium explorer. That's where all the high-grade uranium is. You got your big boys there as well, Cameco, of course, who are the one of the largest producers of uranium. I think the biggest is Kazatomprom, which again is from Kazakhstan. So if you're into uranium, Kazakhstan is pretty much the Saudi Arabia of uranium, and they control like 40% of the world's supply of the yellow cakes. Skyharbour, I think, is getting a lot of traction because of this. Uranium prices have been inching higher. I'm sure if any of you guys follow commodities and resource mining, uranium has been quite hot, and there's a lot of bulls on uranium. And I think if you want to invest in Skyharbour and other uranium projects, we do sort of have to talk about nuclear and uranium demand. So I think, we'll ask the roundtable here. Are you guys bullish uranium?
So myself, I'm not bullish uranium, but I do talk to, he's a very bullish guy on commodities. Okay. And I think 80% of his portfolio is oil and natural gas. Okay. But he's really loving uranium right now. Well, for the last 2 years since I've been talking to him. Yep. He's from Spain, ironically. But he was talking about uranium a couple years back, and he said something to me that kind of hit home with the sector, where he said a lot of people focus on the end result, the bottom line, but look at the people demanding it. He's like, if you look at the prices for the last few years, they've either consolidated or done nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's because these uranium, the end user, usually the uranium companies, have stockpiled a certain amount, and they're not in the market right now. But if you see their stockpiles, or the quality in their books of the stockpiles is going down, they need to come back to market to actually get the new supplies for the foreseeable future. And I was like, oh man, that's, it's a simple outlook on that, but it's an interesting way to think about it. And since then, most uranium stocks have done pretty well. There was actually a period of time where they were outlanding the S&P 500 by at least 1,000 basis points every week or something like that. And now it's picking through which are the good ones and which are the bad ones, who actually has something viable and who's just pitching a story. I think it was Greg who told me once that in resources, there's a lot of smart people with empty holes. And he's like, you kind of need to pick through and find who are the people who actually have something viable. And I think these guys, from just the quality reports that they do have, actually do have a foundation for the uranium and thorium as well, which is also used for nuclear as well.
So CP, he mentioned Greg Nolan, by the way, who's an expert mining writer for Equity.Guru. CP, so are they pitching something for real, or what are they doing? They've been hovering around 35 to 40 cents. What does that mean?
Well, so look, if I'm being cynical about uranium, I've been hearing every year for the last 5 years that this is the year uranium comes back, and it hasn't yet. But, if I look outside my front window, for the last week in this beautiful summer, we haven't seen the sun, because climate change has meant that what we're seeing is smoke from forest fires. So if that's the new norm, and it was the same last year, that the sun is going to be blotted out because we have too much sun, solar goes out the window. And so if we're looking at what are we going to be using to create electricity in years ahead, well, the only reason we're not festooned with uranium, with nuclear reactors, is in the 80s, we had a meltdown in Russia, and we had problems with where we're going to put the spent uranium in years to come. So everyone decided nuclear reactors are terrible. Fukushima sure didn't help that, but the modern day reactors are a lot less problematic, especially in a place like Canada where we're not having hurricanes, we're not having earthquakes, we're in a reasonably safe place. If Canada decided tomorrow to spot nuclear reactors across the northern side of the country, we could be selling energy to the US at pennies on the dollar for the next 50, 60 years. So, I think that uranium will have its day. That day's not today, and it's probably not tomorrow, but it is coming. And a company like Skyharbour that isn't necessarily digging it out of the ground at great expense and having to set it aside in a giant pile, but rather exploring for pennies on the dollar and finding cheap, inexpensive prospects that, quite frankly, right now, guys are trying to get out of because they're out of the ability to maintain. So there's a lot of cheap uranium prospects out there, and these guys actually work those prospects, right? Jordan Trimble runs this company. His dad, Bill Trimble, is an absolute freaking legend on the House Street circuit. He's been around for a long ass time, putting together good deals. And the guys that have been in the business for a long ass time and haven't been either run out of town on a rail or had their reputations destroyed by shitty deals or shitty dealings, are few and far between. When you get a guy like the Trimble family, a guy like Bill Trimble, and his son comes along and is following the same model, well, again, back the jockey, right? Skyharbour's been around since I've been around on the markets, and it's been a company that hasn't run out of cash. It hasn't got itself a bad reputation. It hasn't hung all of its possibilities on one deal. It's continually buying cheap, selling high. It raises money when it needs to without too much trouble. People are happy to do business with the Trimbles, and you're always in exploration. You're always like one bad result away from death. Well, how the hell does this company manage to stick around for so long and have an upward trajectory in a market for resources that is pretty ordinary? So, I think if Skyharbour hits on one of those many projects, then it goes. If uranium picks up, then Skyharbour goes. And people start buying prospects, Skyharbour goes. So, where's my risk profile here? The risk is no one ever buys uranium again. I don't think that's going to happen. The risk is that these guys run out of money. They've never run out of money yet. And they've been in the market in a really terrible time for resources. So survivalists, happy traders, good reputation, good people, and, a resource that one day, it might not be tomorrow, but one day we will get a government in place here that will see the opportunity for nuclear. We'll say, look, we're going to use industry best practices to make sure there's no possibility of meltdowns. We're going to make sure that we're going above and beyond to make sure that First Nations people are included and that environmental, regulations are followed. And look, there will be people who will yell, and there'll be people who will, we should instead be pointing our energy generation at the sun that I can't see anymore. If you're worried about climate change, nuclear reactors actually are the way to go. It's weird to say that because I was around during Chernobyl, I was around during Fukushima. I saw what happens with the old school reactors. It doesn't happen with the new school reactors. It's a whole different ballgame. Mm-hmm. And I think Skyharbour's at the right place at the right time with the right people and the right prospects and the right attitude.
Sure. I just want to sort of quickly build on that, just really quickly. On your point on, it being the next sort of power source, what a lot of analysts are thinking is that we're not going to transition into solar or wind just like that, right? Because currently wind and solar can't handle baseload power. So that's where people think, in between, we're going to go either uranium, nuclear energy, and maybe even natural gas. So that's the opportunity there. And, technically, nuclear energy is the cleanest green energy. It is CO2 free. There is some issues with maybe dealing with the waste, but I think the half-life is a few hundreds of years or something. So it's about, storing that. That's sometimes an issue, but I think some of the newer reactors can now do that very efficiently and cleanly.
True. I think it's a trend both that the US, ironically, of all people, who was at the forefront of this was Trump, who was he put a bill through to try start up a fund in the US where the government was going to buy $150 million of uranium every year. I think from starting this year, ending 2030 or something like that. And it was all because the quality of the miners in the US are not that great. They're not able to sustain themselves. And
I
here
believe they made it a strategic reserve.
Yeah. And here is a company in Canada doing it well. So just an indication of the quality of the mine. Obviously, Kazakhstan is top tier, but there are other miners, and one of the Canadian ones, I forgot the name, is the larger one.
Cameco?
I think it's Cameco. Yeah, it might be. Is also part of that high quality branding that they have.
Cameco actually sells the uranium, so they're the miners who actually sell it, where a lot of these guys are the juniors.
Just mine it.
I hope you're ready, TK, because tomorrow we are coming back. We're doing the Kazakhstan market review and giving advice. So Chris is stoked. Chris has been doing the research.
My favorite, man, the Kazakhs.
I'll make sure I have a conversation with him before.
I stand Kazakhstan.
So it sounds like it's a buy and hold, and it's just a matter of when you decide to initiate the buy portion of that. So there you go.
You always follow the biggest guys. The guys that can do better due diligence than me are the guys that I want to be following in their wake. So if I look at like Paul Matisik, I look at Marion Katusa, Doug Casey, like these guys are in on Skyharbour, and they're not in for a week, they're not in for a month, they're in, right? Like they are part of the Brains Trust. They're the guys that if this company needs more money, they write a check. If this company needs more investors, they tell their followers. You don't get those guys just cause. You get those guys because you're trustworthy, you've got a business model, you've been around for a while, people know your track record. Look, Equity.Guru, the reason we're still alive, even though sometimes we put shit on our clients, is because people trust us. And the business model there is, look, we could make a shit ton more money if we just lied through our teeth. Right? If we just took a check and said, this is a great deal. We don't do that because we want to be around in 25 years. And the Trimble family has been following that business model for as long as I've been alive. And so Skyharbour, as much as they've got other deals, they've had other prospects, Skyharbour is the one that has always been synonymous with Jordan Trimble and Bill behind him. And man, I can't see a time when this company would be one of those zombie deals that's flying around at $1.50. It's going to be a player. The fact that they've got some gold plays in there as well, that's a good hedge. I don't mind that. If you're the kind of guy where people come to you and say, I've got this deal and I need some money to pay my ex-wife, I'm looking to offload it, you go to the Trimbles. And if they spot an opportunity in gold, then shit, let's take it. They know who to flip it to, or they know how to work it. So, man, I love this deal. And I love the fact that in a market where all the resource companies are taking a nosedive and where every resource investor is hiding, Skyharbour's rising and rising significantly. Like this is a company that's on a double over the last 6 months. That's, I'm buying and not making any apologies for it.
All right. So, and about the dumping the money, they didn't read my emails about the ex-wife. What's going on there?
We've all got our crosses to bear.
That's the story on Skyharbour. For folks out there watching, please do your own research, educate yourselves, listen to what we have to say, of course, but we can't guarantee anything, and we won't guarantee anything. But take this and other information and make your own investment decisions. Thank you very much.
Skyharbour. Just before we go, one other thing to add that just sprang up to me. Of all the companies that we do business with, these guys are the cheapest bastards around. It is like pulling teeth to get a deal out of them. Honest to God, they are protecting shareholders' money in a way that really pisses me off sometimes. But
Come on, Skyharbour, let's go.
It's a good thing for a shareholder. It's just hard work for us.
We're talking about you. SYH.V, Vancouver-based, traded in Toronto. Write us a check, but that's different. That's a whole separate issue. We'll talk to you soon. For Chris over there and Vishal and TK down there living in the dungeon, I'm Rob. We'll see you on the next Equity Guru Investor Roundtable.